So there you are after a long full life, and as you're about to die, you say, I don't have time for this baloney, I gotta finish my game collection. Sorry, Mr. Grim Reaper, but I'm still looking for a copy of Bucky O'Hare. The Sonic 2 manual could use replacing, and don't even get me started on those elusive Sega Saturn games I'm missing. Yeah, while you can't take your collection into the grave with you, although some may disagree, you can certainly experience the satisfaction of reaching your collecting goals before then, so that when you do go to your grave, you can go with pride. I know what my gravestone will say on it. Question is, can you reach all of your collecting goals to the point where you can say, I am done with my collection? Well, sure you can. In fact, I was just having a moment the other day where I thought to myself, I have all the video games I'll ever need. I am just so at peace right now. Game! Alright, you caught me in a moment of weakness there, but now that I have that one more game, I'm all done. Wait a second, could I be a Virtual Boy person? I think I could be a Virtual Boy person. Owning one is ironic, yet playful. What can make completing your game collection so tricky is that it's almost like trying to put out a fire by throwing logs at it, where with every new game or new console you add, it's like adding another log and the fire grows. The fire that is your passion for gaming. Let's say a game like Thunder Force 3 gets recommended to you. You like it? Now you've become curious about other shoot-em-ups. It's like a vicious cycle. Games, curiosity, games, curiosity, games. And with new games and consoles constantly catching your interest, it's hard to ever be done. Plus, there are so many games in existence. You will never run out of possibilities. Did you know that Bassin's Black Bass with Hank Parker, aka Super Black Bass 2, is a game? Well, now you do. You're welcome for letting you know, and sorry for spending your money for you. You can't just complete your collection by collecting every video game ever made either. That's too much for even the most dedicated fan. We're not talking about something like collecting all 151 Pokemon cards, where reaching the end actually seems feasible. There's how many Pokemon now? Well, I tried. It's not just limited to games and consoles either. There's all sorts of doodads you can get to go with your consoles. Controllers being the biggest one, let me tell ya. Doesn't take much to convince yourself that life would be better with an orange controller in it. When it comes to your personal video game collection and how it's tracking, there's a magical little phrase that I see getting thrown around a lot. I have all the games I want. Typically, it's referring to games for a specific console, but in any context, that's the ideal place we're all trying to get to, isn't it? I think the temptation to say this comes from the fact that not having a game you'd like to have is kind of a nasty feeling. I mean, we're not kids anymore. Well, most of us aren't. If you are a kid watching, bravo to you for caring about older video games. But the days of being a kid with no money and not being able to have the games we want should be behind us, or at least many of us would like to think they are. Yeah, looks like the days of not having enough money never stopped. In any case, when somebody says, I have all the games I want, maybe they're trying to convince you, maybe they're trying to convince themselves, maybe they're trying to convince their significant other who wonders when they're finally gonna organize all these dang games crowding up the garage. I don't know. But in any case, it's an empowering statement. You have every game you want. It doesn't get any better than that, and a privilege that might just be reserved for adults, because how often do you ever hear a kid say, I have everything I want? Most kids, you give them a cracker, 20 seconds later they're asking for a cookie. But I think all of this highlights a good point, which is, why do we even care if our collection is finished or not? I mean, as impressive as my bread bag clip collection is, there's still some colors and variations I don't have. I'm looking for a long orange one. And yet, you don't see me losing any sleep over it. Nothing but pride, baby. And sure, some of you probably don't care if your collection is finished, but some of us do, and I think it's only natural. As much as there can be fun had acquiring new games, it does take focus away from playing what we already have. And there might be a part of you that just wants to be done collecting so you can put all your focus on playing games. Or, maybe staring at them too. And yeah, I know for those of you who don't collect, but only play games, a very viable option, being able to focus on nothing but playing games might be exactly why you chose that route to begin with. Hey, look at this collection, all done. Okay, so while I've already mentioned that the seemingly endless amount of games in existence can serve as the metaphorical ever-dangling carrot on a stick, what can really make the amount of games you have to choose from seem endless is if you're also into newer games. In fact, I know some people won't play newer games, not because they have an issue with them, but strictly because they have so many older games to get through. Yep, still working on 1991. Maybe games will eventually get easier. But if you're somebody who plays both retro and newer games, you've got games coming in from all sorts of different angles. Yeah, if your personal game of the week has ever been a tie between Adventures of Lolo and Elden Ring, you know what I'm talking about. However, even if you're somebody who's sworn off modern games altogether, just like anything else, sometimes all it takes is that one game to restoke the fires and get you interested again. I mean, imagine if somebody's favorite game was Resident Evil 2 and then this brilliance came out. Could be tempting, but even besides a game like that, we're constantly getting new releases of older games and even consoles themselves. My Genesis always wanted to have a child of its own. What am I gonna do? Deprive it? And look at how cute they are playing together, showing their parents that everyone can get along now. Alright, but let's just say that you are somehow able to steer clear of any newer releases, whether they're retro or not. You're still left with all of the older consoles and their games. Now, in theory, once you get all the games you want for a specific console, you should be able to check that console off your list. Then what do you do next? You move on to another console. And believe me, there is always a next console you can queue up if you really want to. There's people who collect for the Tiger Telematics Gizmondo. You think that's priority number one in their game collection? I suppose for somebody it could be, but the point is that something doesn't have to be the best thing in the world to be interesting and therefore be something you want to collect. Take the Virtual Boy, for example. Some people love it, sure, but a lot of people own it simply because it's such an interesting part of gaming history. And when it comes to video games, most of us have a ton of passion for this hobby, making it really easy to get curious. One night at 2 a.m., I found myself wondering what all the different colors were that PlayStation 2 memory cards in North America came out in. And thanks to loyal viewer of the channel, Good Vibe Collecting, I got myself an answer. The other issue I've found to be the case for a lot of people is that even if you do feel like you've finished collecting every game you want for a console, your tastes and preferences can evolve or change over time, tempting you to come back to reevaluate a console's library, and possibly add more games to your wish list. Let's say you always thought you hated RPGs, but one day realize you actually do enjoy them. Well, great, but now you may not be as done with your PS1 collection as you once thought. You know, I think sometimes people are scared to let certain games go in terms of selling them off, trading them to somebody, or what have you, because they're worried they're going to want them again at some point. Liking a specific game, or even certain genre of game, isn't a static thing. I repurchased Final Fantasy VII 4 times until finally I said to myself, enough is enough, just keep it. Which I did, by the way, and finally played all the way through it. Now, while a single game can usually be repurchased easily enough, what about an entire console and all the games you had for it? Yikes. If you've ever gotten rid of a console collection that you've since been priced out of buying back, that can sting. And for some people, might linger in your brain as a reminder that your collection will never be done. Maybe that's why people with complete Gizmondo collections won't let them go. I think the desire to own every game you want also comes from the idea of completeness ingrained in many collectors. Game collectors go after having all sorts of things complete, whether it's having a game complete in the box or case with its manual, having every game in a series, owning every console from your favorite company, making sure you have one of these little precautions booklets inside every game. What do these even say inside of them? I don't know, I've never read it, but I'll be gosh darned if it's missing from even a single one of my GameCube games. You know what? Now I'm curious. Let's see what it says in here. Ah, that makes sense. And of course, when it comes to collecting things complete, there's no limit to how aggressive you can get, with some people going after a complete collection of every game released for a console. But regardless of what you're after, the ultimate example of completeness for anybody would be to complete your personal collection as you see fit. Well, sounds nice, but it may be a good idea to get comfortable with the possibility of it never happening. I mean, so long as the games you do own make for a nice collection, anything that comes after that should just be considered a nice little cherry on top, however many cherries that may end up being. Adding a game to your collection should be a fun thing, not a burden. And if your collection feels incomplete without a certain game, just stop for a minute to think about how that might make the rest of your collection feel. Yeah, a little bit underappreciated. So on that note, I've got a little exercise for everyone. Grab one of your favorite parts of your collection, and maybe even just some of your favorite things in general, and say the following to yourself. My collection is enough, has always been enough, and will always be enough. Feel better now? But with that said, for this video's question, in the spirit of appreciation, I'd like to ask what part of your collection makes it feel most complete to you. It could be something small, big, worth a lot of money, or hardly anything. All that matters is that it is personally meaningful to you. So with that, leave your response down below, and I will see ya in the next video.
He's the retro bird, yeah, and he's talking about video games. He's